Good evening, my name is Peter Steenland. I do not live in Paulding County. I'm an attorney with a law firm of Sidley Austin in Washington, D.C. So if you've never seen a genuine K Street, Washington lawyer before, come on up later and shake my hand. I'd love to meet you and talk to you. I represent the 6 Paulding County residents who sued the FAA to get this environmental assessment and to get this hearing. With all due respect and affection for the people who have spoken tonight and embraced the quality of this document, I need to disagree. I've been doing this stuff now for 40 years, and I have to tell you with a degree of regret that this is one of the worst documents that I have ever seen. If I were still back doing what I'd been doing before, assisting the FAA in this stuff, this rascal would have been killed in the cradle. It never would have seen the light of day. And let me just tell you a couple of reasons why. You've heard a lot about it tonight already. You know, one of the things that an impact statement or an assessment is supposed to do is to tell people that there are alternatives to the proposed action. The courts have said that's the linchpin of environmental analysis. Here, if the proposed action, according to the words of the EA, are to provide greater service to the flying public of Northwest Georgia, if that's the purpose, then is there an alternative to giving a Part 139 to Paulding? I think so. I mean, we're only 40 miles away from the largest commercial airport in the world. Why don't we even talk about it? Has that airport become invisible? Does it no longer exist? I mean, they've got over 200 gates. There's access, it's adequate. It's a dandy airport. And if Allegiant wants to go there to serve the flying needs of the public from Northwest Georgia, they can. They're welcome. Now, you might say, no. Allegiant doesn't want to go to Hartsfield, and that's why we shouldn't look at it. Allegiant only goes to these little cities, St. Cloud, and, Upper New York State and all that. That's not true. Allegiant's got lots of flights from big cities. Cincinnati, Frank just mentioned Cincinnati. Las Vegas, and others. And as Frank said, Allegiant just threatened to leave Mesa and go to the throbbing, bustling Phoenix Sky Harbor, where probably many of you have gone. I mean, you got American there, you got Southwest there. And so don't say that Allegiant is somehow allergic to Atlanta. Not true. That should have been discussed. So maybe they'll say, no. We're talking about low-cost carriers. So that's why we don't have to consider Hartsfield. But as you just learned, Hartsfield already has Southwest. They've got Frontier. They've got Spirit. They've got the low-cost carriers. And so that's no reason to ignore it either. These points have been ignored. And as you heard earlier from one of the speakers, the state of Georgia and the FAA spent $1 million on a study 4 years ago to look at 29 airports in the area, including some around here, including one that considered this very question and rejected it. Apparently that study doesn't exist either. And that's why we are so concerned with this document. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do because it doesn't tell you or tell me what we need to know. It simply ignores it. That's not adequacy. But there's a bigger problem. The problem is that in addition to alternatives, you've got to talk about what is the action that you're studying. What's this all about? The proposed federal action is the Part 139 certificate. That's the reason for doing the EA. The problem here is that the FAA has conflated the issuance of the 139 with the proposal by Allegiant. They've studied the Allegiant proposal in terms of telling you there'll be no environmental impacts. Well, gee, 2 flights a week? Probably so. You might run over a couple coyotes here and there. But impacts? No. That's the wrong assumption. The assumption has to be, what's the proposed action? And the proposed action, as some people have said tonight, very accurately, is a big deal. A 139 certificate is significant because it's so transformative. Once an airport gets a 139 certificate, it loses control over who gets to fly here. It has to let anybody in, anytime, as many times as they want, as long as they get in and out safely. That's a fact. Not only is it a fact, but in Snohomish County, Washington, where they had a 139, and people like you said, we don't want commercial service, and the county said, we don't either. The FAA threatened to sue the county if they didn't let Allegiant in. So hey, this is a problem. And then there's this whole idea of, well, 2 flights a week? Come on. You think that Propeller is going to be spending all this money just on 2 flights a week? 2 flights a couple times a week? Doesn't matter. It's way too small. And the FAA is going to say, we can't control that. Frank lives a few miles from the Trenton Mercer County Airport, New Jersey. What happened there? Well, Frontier got in there, and Frontier started flying like crazy after a year when they were doing 3 flights. And the citizens came to the FAA and said, shut these guys down, there's too many airplanes. Do an environmental analysis. And the FAA said in court papers, we're very sorry, we have no authority. Once you give these guys a permission to operate, it's up to the market, because this is all called deregulation. And so when this environmental analysis says, not to worry, here's what Allegiant proposes, and here's what we're studying, they've got the wrong picture. They're not looking at the right thing. They're not looking at the 139. And besides, let's say at some point the county decides, if it's issued, we don't want it anymore. Let's decide that every member of the Board of Commissioners says this was a terrible idea. Let's turn it in. You know what? It's not so easy to do. It rarely happens. Because in order to turn it in, you got to pay them back all the money that they gave you for the federal grants. You got to write a big check. Not going to happen. So that's why this is so transformative. And my final point is, this is such a big deal that it is reasonable for us to ask the FAA to pay attention to the citizens and to the county government, which has clearly spoken. The county doesn't want this. The citizens don't want it. We're not talking about building a little extension on a terminal building. We're not talking about some inconsequential development. We're talking about a transformative action that is almost irrevocable. And this is not the situation that the FAA confronts every day. Because let's face it, every time they build a new runway, every time they fix an air traffic procedure, people complain. The FAA deals with this kind of controversy every day. What the agency needs to realize is that this is different. This is different because it's not a bunch of disgruntled neighbors or people running around playing NIMBY. Not in my backyard. I mean, we're not even talking about banana. I don't know if you know what banana is. It's build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone. So we're not talking NIMBY or banana here. We're talking the duly elected government. We're talking about people who ran for office saying, we don't want this. And they've written a letter. They've adopted a resolution. They have sent a legal opinion. And now they filed a lawsuit. At this point, you have to ask yourself, what else is needed to call somebody, to have somebody call a timeout? Really, what's the rush? What's the hurry? Why are we moving along so far? I mean, I'm the guy who was responsible for this hearing, working with my 6 clients and residents. And so even though we're partially responsible, I don't think we should be here. I think this should have been shut down. Now, if it goes forward, it simply seems to me that you can't use this environmental assessment. A couple nights ago, I was home. I was in the kitchen. I was making my wife dinner, and I made a mistake. I just screwed up. Happens quite often. But I couldn't save it. The food I was making, I couldn't add another spice. I couldn't throw some butter in. There was no cream that would save it. I just had to throw the whole thing out and start all over again. And that's what the FAA should do. Thanks.